Hello everybody. Well, today is November the 2nd. November the 2nd, Wednesday. I'm on vacation. Um, I've had a horrible cold. I guess maybe it probably still shows. And I know I still sound like Rudolph. But uh, it's getting better. You should have seen me several days ago. But I am getting better. And people say, I hate that you have to be sick on your vacation. But I'd rather be sick on my vacation than while I'm at work because I just don't miss work. This was also the first year that I could not participate in Halloween. And that was awful because I always participate in Halloween. And I know when the kids were young, I would always take them out trick-or-treating for Halloween. And where we lived at in Virginia, we never really got many trick-or-treaters. But here, I always get between 75 and 100. And I wasn't able to treat the little goblins this year. I had my door decorated. I had my candy all set up in a great big red bowl. And but as the time grew closer, I just said, you know what, I'm not up to bouncing back and forth to the door for 3 hours, so I'm just not going to be able to do it. So this is where the signs come in. I said, well, excuse me. I turned off the light to my patio. I turned off the light at my back door because I keep them on all the time. I keep them on 24 hours a day. Yes, even during the daytime, those lights stay on. I never touch them. I've got those new light bulbs, and I've had them burning for like, the one at the back door has been out there for about a year. The one at the front door on the patio has been out there for 3 years. I've never had to change it. But with regular light bulbs, I was having to change one on my patio like every 2 months. But it's been out there for 3 years, probably a little over 3 years now. It stays on all the time. Never had to change it. But anyway. So I decided, well, some kids and all their excitement, because they're used to coming here every year, might not notice that my light's out, and they'll just come up here anyway. And I didn't want to be bothered. So I've got a metal patio table. It's square. And I laid it down on its side, and then I made a big sign with big black letters that says, please do not disturb. And I put it over at the top of the steps on the patio to where, it served as a gate. And for the most part, everything was fine. But I was sitting here and I heard a bunch of kids, and then it sounded like they were coming up the steps, and then I heard them running across the patio, and then I heard somebody hollering at them. Then they all turned around and ran back out. But I went and looked up my kitchen blinds, and these kids literally ran up, stepped over top of that table, and was coming to the door. It was like they were ignoring the sign. And it wasn't just one or two. It was a whole big group of them. I told the kids, I said, sound like hooves coming across the patio. There were so many of them. But somebody must have saw the sign at the last minute. I also have a no soliciting sign on my front door. And you would be surprised at how many knocks on my door I get. All the time. And it's the majority of the time it's from teenagers selling stuff for their school. Can you not read this sign that says no soliciting? I even had one man from we have the meat truck. I don't remember what it's called, where they go around, they sell you meats and stuff off their truck. Never bought any, but that's an easy. I've heard a lot of people that have, and they say it's good. So that's just not my thing. They came one time and stood there and knocked on the door, and I didn't go to the door because I got the no soliciting sign up. Then they knocked again. I said, well, and I go to the door and I open the door, and he pointed at my sign. He said, yeah, I saw your sign after I knocked. He said, I didn't want to be rude by walking away, so I just thought I'd wait till you come to the door. I said, well, okay. And I got ready to shut the door. He said, well, while I'm here, I said, no. So, and then another sign that I made one time, there was a guy that used to come here. That's been 9 or 10 years ago. It was when my husband was still alive. And this guy, his name was Mike. And I didn't like Mike because Mike didn't work. I didn't like him because, it wasn't that I didn't like him because he didn't work. He was the kind that didn't want to work. He always wanted something for nothing. And he would want to cut your grass and do this, that, and the other, which is nothing wrong with a little handyman now and then. But he would bounce around from person's home to friend's home to friend's home to friend's home. And eventually to somebody would offer him to spend the night because he didn't have his own place. But anyway, the reason I didn't like Mike, because he wore out his welcome. He would come in and just stay and stay and stay. And when I would get irritated with him and want him to leave, he would say, boy, you sure are pretty when you get mad. And I told him, I said, I'm about to become damn beautiful. Now you need to go home. And he just laughed. And my husband had to tell him, Mike, it's time for you to go. So, and then it got to where he would end up showing up here every evening. And so it was on Friday night, and I didn't want to be bothered with him that evening, so I made a sign about this wide, about this big, and put it at eye level of anybody walking up to that door. I didn't put it down here, I put it at eye level. And had big, bold, black letters, please do not disturb, 3 exclamation marks. At about 8 o'clock that night, and I told my husband, I said, let me get it. And so I got up, my husband was sitting over on the couch, and I opened the door and it was Mike. And as soon as I opened that door and saw him, I pointed to the sign. I said, you can't read. And he laughed. He thought it was cute. And so then he's going to say, is Ross around? And I opened the door and I looked back at my husband. My husband was sitting there and Mike could see him. And I looked at my husband, I looked at Mike, I said, no. I said, what you want, Mike? The sign said, do not disturb. He said, well, I told him I'd bring him some fresh greens if I was back in the garden. He said, so I bought him some greens. I said, okay, I'll give them to him. And he handed me a bag. He's like, oh, wait a minute, that's my clothes. It must be in this bag. So what was he doing walking down here with his bag of clothes at 8 o'clock in the evening? That's the latest he ever came down. So apparently, he was intending on spending the night at my house. No. So, that pissed me off. And I had to work the next day. And so I told and I would always come home on my lunch breaks. Because my husband never worked on weekends. So I told my husband the next day, I said, you need to tell him he's not welcome here. I don't want him here. I said, because if I come home on my lunch break, and that was that morning, I was telling myself, if I come home on my lunch break today and he's here, I'm going to get in the car and I'll turn around and I'm going back to work. I refused to sit in the house with Mike in the house. That's how bad I could not stand that man. So I came home on my lunch break and my husband was in the doorway and I get halfway across the driveway and then I look at him. I said, are we alone? And he was like, yeah. And I come to the door. He said, we are now. So he said Mike showed up exactly when I even told him, I said he's going to show up 10 minutes before I'm supposed to get home from my lunch break. Sure enough, 10 minutes to 11, Mike showed up. And my husband said he told him, he said, Mike, I need to tell you that, he said, I just want to let you know that Cindy just don't like company to just drop in. And I said, Mike walked over and sat down and said, you know what, some people's funny like that, ain't they? So my husband told him then, he said, well, Mike, honestly, I just been putting up with you, but I really don't care for you dropping by. You know, we have nothing in common. Cindy don't like you being here. He says, matter of fact, Cindy can't stand you. And he says she has a problem with you. And when my wife has a problem, I have a problem. So I think it's going to be in your best interest if you would leave. And when you do, don't bother coming back. So Mike was shocked. But he got up and he left. And he never came back. And I was so happy my husband did that. Mike never came back. Well, he came back about 2 years later. But when he did come back, he knocked on the front door and I went to the door and he asked for Ross. And I said, my husband died 6 months ago, Mike. And he was like, what? And he acted like he was shocked. Then he was trying to tell me then, well, if you need anything done, if you need any yard work done, I would just cut him off every time. I said, my son takes care of that. Well, if you need anything inside the house done, I said, my son takes care of that. If you need anything, just let me know. He said, do you want me to swing by here periodically to see? I said, that will not be necessary. And I haven't seen him since. Well, I've seen him out and about sometimes, but I avoid him so he don't see me. But he ignored that sign big time. And then, this is another good example of ignoring the signs. The kids, they both work at the Ramada. Stephanie will work 3 to 11, and then Joe goes in and does night audit from 11 to 7. Well, during this time, especially when he works, he'll put a sign on the door that said, lobby closed, I think from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Please use side window. Right there's the door. The sign is right there, and right here's the side window where you can talk to the teller on the inside. And he said that they'll come and they'll look at that sign, and then try to open the door, and then stand around, look around like, well, why can't I get in? So they're not reading the signs. It makes no sense. And I know these people can read. And, another thing I wanted to say about Halloween the other day. Well, it really don't have anything to do with Halloween, but it pertains to children. And this really ticks me off. Well, anyway, I had a friend of mine, Facebook friend of mine, said that he had a lot of teenagers to come, about 16 years old and stuff, to come out trick-or-treating, and some of them were really rude. See, there is a cutoff. It's 12 years old to be cut off. But then these parents sometimes will let their kids go out, or sometimes the kids just say, well, I'm going over to so-and-so's house, and then they go out trick-or-treating together. The parents might not even know. So you can't always blame everything on the parents, but if the kids are being rude, it's just unnecessary. I know the other day, we were stopped by a school bus. When was it? I think it was yesterday morning. Early in the morning, we were stopped by a school bus. It was still dark outside. And we sat there for about 4 minutes. And one little kid from way up the street come down. Wasn't even running, trying to get to the bus, just walking. That bus sat there. And the little kid got on the bus. Next thing, then there's one over here. That kid just walking. Come over, get on the school bus. Then another one will come out of a house. We sat there forever and a day. These kids don't even try to run to the bus stop. And then the parents that walk them to the bus stop, after the bus leaves, the parents will walk right in front of the car. And you got to toot the horn to make the parents move. And then, God forbid, it's in the evening time when all these kids get off the bus. Then them and the parents are walking along. You got to go through the park tooting your horn. They turn around like, who the hell you think you're blowing at? These people piss me off. I mean, it just shows no respect at all. None. And if the parents are not respecting, well, of course the kids are not respecting anybody. And they're going to grow up thinking, especially these wee little tiny ones. For example, I come around the corner one day, and there was this little girl on a little, I would say tricycle. It was one of those plastic tricycles, big wheels is what we used to call them. And she was on that, and she was going right along in front of me, and her mother was standing over here in the yard with her arms folded. And that little girl riding right in front of me, and I had to go way around her and go up in the grass. And that little girl stopped and turned around and looked at me like, and the mother's standing over there not saying anything to her. The mother's going to be real hurt one day when somebody, not me, but somebody comes flying and hits that child. Because they either didn't see her, or they just hit her for the shit of it. People ought to teach their kids to stay out of the road. It should be common sense to stay out of the roads anyway. I would have busted my kids' ass had they done that. But, and another thing, I'm just going on and on, ain't I? But one other thing that I saw this morning that just makes no sense. was me and Stephanie had just come off of High Point Road and was going down there near the mall, and there was a person, and mind you, it was still dark, but there was a person walking on the left-hand side of the street. Well, the sidewalk was on the right-hand side of the street, but yet he was walking on the side of the road on the left-hand side of the street. She said, why is he walking over there when the sidewalk is over here? I don't know. I said, now I know you're supposed to walk facing traffic, but not when there's a sidewalk available for you. That's only if you're walking on a road that has no sidewalk. I don't know. What can I say? But anyway, that's enough ranting and raving and chit-chatting for now. I'm just babbling and everything else. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to put on some stew and make me some homemade soup. I think homemade soup will just hit the spot for me. And it's been so cold. It's not been as cold here as it is for a lot of people. I know a lot of my Facebook friends have had a lot of snow. And schools have even been closed for some of them. And I'm like, wow. We haven't had any snow. We just had frost in the mornings. But by next week, it's supposed to be back in the 70s here. So I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, I guess that's all I'm going to talk about now. And until next time, bye-bye.